haven't called the start function yet, and they'll be at like 800 tal to 1 alpha.
All that crap's just noise. You know what I would say about those new subnets is, for the average person, unless you have the ability to set up a bot or something that can snipe these things when they drop to a certain level, it's almost impossible during the first like week, maybe even 2 weeks. Well, 2 weeks for sure if we have the 2 week waiting period before emissions start. But you might even have to stay out of there for like 3 weeks, because as a human being, you simply cannot move fast enough to catch the value on these dips. So what I would suggest is, if you have an interest in a subnet, use artificial intelligence, use one of the bots that have been posted within the community and modify that to generate some code for yourself so that you yourself can set something up and basically have buys that come in when a certain price, is reached, and just try to add a little bit of tau at a time. I have been successful, and I've only done it for one subnet that I was interested in, but taking the time to watch the price, and I was going in manually without a bot, did definitely pay off if you can snipe those like ups and downs as people trade in and out of the very small amount of alpha that's sitting in those new subnets. So that's my advice for that. Otherwise, just if you're a normal dude, just stay away.
So talk me through what you see here. You open up Tal Stats. What do you see? What does the guru look at?
Okay. I look at the subnet value in the upper left. Mainly, I just look at this number here. I don't look at the root or the alpha percentage. Of course, you can look at that. Fine. I don't do it. Tau market cap, I don't look at. Total value or total volume, I don't look at. It's nice to see, but I'd never even look at those things. As I'm going in, the first thing I'm checking is the price, and I want to get a sense on the 1 hour and the 24 hour for what's been happening basically with the ecosystem in general. So the top 10 is a great way to start with that. That's what we're looking at here. We'll change it to 100 rows so we can scroll through all the subnets at one time. Obviously, we know, like, just from being involved in this in dynamic tau now, that we're running pretty hot at 203. Obviously, you can look at the weeklies here and see that you've got above 50% on a lot of the top subnets, and the ones that aren't pumping hard are mostly treading water or just like slightly down. So that's kind of like, it's like taking your pulse or something when you first jump in and you haven't looked at it for a few hours, but you want to see what's going on. The next thing that you want to check is, and actually this little chart over here, sometimes you don't really notice it, but it's kind of useful because there is quite a bit of information lost between 24 hours and the 1 hour. You know what I'm saying? So you can be up 25% in the last 24 hours. You got down here 0.52 in the last hour for shoots. But if you take a look at shoots is actually not down really in the last hour. I mean, maybe in the last, it's actually been pumping pretty hard. You know what I'm saying? Over the last 6 hours, 8 hours. So that's where I tend to gravitate towards, is when I'm interested in looking at something and I see a subnet that I want to allocate to. I check this first, see how hot it is on the daily, see where it's been pumping on the week. Today, and over the last 2 days, almost everything worth swapping into is going up. So you're having to make some tough decisions as to where you think this thing is going to go. And that's the fun part, but that's initially what I look at. We've talked a lot about shoots. We don't need to talk about it anymore. It's trading above 0.4. Yeehaw. Okay. Targon, we know, we've all seen the video, I think, at this point of Targon's new office, the DEAI down there in Austin. It's got Rob at the helm. You already talked about, it's James, I think, it's doing a lot of the coding
James,
there.
Josh, Ahmed.
Josh, yeah.
Great team down there.
Yeah, so Targon is not going anywhere. And my initial thought on Targon, and I do think that's a great team, is that the more that we see shoots and these other prices fly up, I do expect to see Targon making some moves, simply because I see them putting a lot of resources into a single subnet. You know what I'm saying? And if you look at some of the other teams, sometimes they have multiple subnets. The top teams, these guys have one baby, and it's like, if you got an only child, that only child's going to get spoiled, And so this subnet is going to get the full attention of this team. And I don't think that they're planning on failing, and I really wouldn't bet against them. That being said, they're sort of in the same, vertical as maybe in 19. There's this little spat between these inference subnets, and Targon has some unique things that they're offering. So I think that's pretty solid play. And obviously the price has not been pumping. Look at the weekly, right? It's not up very much compared to the rest of the top 10. Maybe there's some value there. So if I was interested in Targon, I'd put a little star on that as okay, it's pretty quiet the last week, probably something there. Gradients has been the monster that came, you thought it was
that chart. Let people see that chart.
Dude, you thought this thing was high at 0.04.
Because you can't even get the full picture here.
You did basically you thought down here it was high. I did, at least, because it was down here in the 0.015 range. So it's done a 10-12x at this point. You saw this pullback actually, because what you had here is when we did this pump, it went up to 0.03, but it went right back down. So this was the surprise for me. We'll get this blue thing out of here. But we're at 0.016. We going up to 0.013, and it's back down here to the 0.015 range. And I don't know when the podcast came out, probably right here. No, I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. But the podcast is not the reason why this thing's pumping. The reason this thing's pumping is because this is you can listen to the podcast about it, but this is a groundbreaking way of customizing models, and it will be the future of how you make a model your own, is this type of methodology. I firmly believe that, and it looks like many other people believe it too. So when's it going to stop? I don't know. You thought it was high here. You thought it was high here. You thought it was high at 10 or 12, and now it's at 17. So maybe it's not going to stop, because this goes back to the conversation that we had earlier about how people look at this thing. And how people look at BitTensor and the market cap and the FDV and the whole thing. It's people want ownership of these entities that are creating one of a kind, decentralized intelligence commodities, and they're willing to pay for them at the valuation that they believe that project would get out on the street or in, VC land or on whatever it's called, Angels List, or I don't know, so there's people are willing to pay for it. Obviously, what a monster. That thing is, that's the biggest mover of anything in, any project.
So far, that's probably been the highest % return from bottom to top.
Yeah, Templar. So Templar's loves Templar. He even said that Jacob Steves, BitTensor co-founder, contributed, I believe, to their incentive mechanism. They were on novelty search. That team has created something. They've got a very nice loss curve that I think that they've been trotting out there the last couple of days on X. That team appears to be capable, if you believe in the price, of delivering a foundational model, like a competitive model with the largest, whether it's a DeepSeek or Llama or whatever. Apparently this thing is capable of getting there. I don't know enough to know that, but when the market believes it, I hesitate to say no. So I would not count anything out, because this is another one up 50% in the last week. That's pretty unbelievable, because what they're doing is extremely difficult, and the competition that they're up against is the highest in the artificial intelligence space and has the most resources. But this is also the subnet that if we actually, as a community and as a project, did pull it off, then it puts BitTensor in a totally different category than if we're a project that doesn't generate one of these models. You know what I'm saying? So that's long shot, but I don't know. I mean, the market's going to do what the market's going to do, and people believe in it.
And that's another one of the subnets where it's primarily one guy at the helm.
Right. Yep. Yeah. And, I don't know. We'll see where it goes. Best of luck. PTN, they've been trading around this 12 mark for a while. I'm not going to say anything about them. They got something coming out, Glitch Financial Beta something, so it allows you to get value from the miners who are doing the predictive trading stuff and maybe do some copy trading, and hopefully they're successful with that. When we see 7% of BitTensor emissions going to a single financial prediction subnet, unless it's actually printing money for the community, I have a hard time understanding why it's at that value. 19 has seen a huge move over the last day, like up 40%. This thing was stuck basically between like 4 and 5 for a long time, crept up into the 5s for a little bit, and then just blew up as part of the whole just obsession with Rayon, and blew up into the 10 range. And we'll see if it holds it. I'm not sure. It's essentially super fast, inference. It's like enterprise level inference from the team at Rayon. I can't say that much about Nova. I didn't get to the novelty search from yesterday, but obviously the market did. So drug discovery, the team is pretty highly rated. The incentive mechanism and the subnet itself seems to be developing, from what I can tell, at a pretty high rate. These guys are shipping, and that's why the price continues to go up. They jumped up into like the 6 range and then bled a little bit down into like the 3s or 4s for a week or two before making this jump back up. You can see that, I'm sure, on the chart. Yeah, right here where they got up to like the 7-6 range and then fell down a little bit. Even here they were up in the 6s and then dropped all the way down to the 4s. But it appears that this team is going nowhere, and that the market is the market's pretty interested in it.
And then the next one after that, Celium, run by Fish. What are your thoughts there?
Celium and Fish are entering a very crowded space. There's 1,100, maybe not 1,000, but there's easily 100 different sites where you can go rent compute. I don't know if we need, a compute rental on BitTensor, but if we do have compute rental, Celium will probably be the go-to platform for it. It's more of a question of, do you think that's a good spot for us to be allocating 4% emissions to, or if you think it's trading at a good price, or if you like, Fish behind it, who has a very long and storied history in this project. So that's how I look at that one. It's more of a play of like, do you believe in that type of thing on BitTensor? Apex is the top subnet from Microcosmos. It's basically the agent play. It's actually the only the most popular agent play anyway, outside of what Shoots is building. The agents on Apex, there's actually 1,000 UIDs running as miners versus the normal, or 1024 versus 256, and they're like grandfathered into this thing. That'll probably get opened up, but for now, they present sort of a unique opportunity. And also that is designed by Stefan Crux, former CTO of OpenTensor. And if you bet against that guy, you got problems. So I would not bet against what he is spending his time building. And I think that as the top subnet from one of the top teams that has some legs. Bitmind is kind of a community favorite. This is the detection of artificial intelligence on either images or video or whatever. Bitmind has had trouble recovering after someone dumped like 4,000 tau worth, I think, maybe like 2-3 weeks ago. You can check it on the chart. Yeah, which they did have a nice jump here. But if you go back, there was one big dump, and that sent them down. Now they're up about 20% from that, and they're moving nicely, with this latest pump. But we'll see if they can recover fully. My question that I have is like, who did that? Was it a miner that was saving up from the beginning? Was it I didn't look into it that closely, but I would be interested if I was allocating into this subnet as to how that wallet got so much alpha and why it dumped, and if it's going to do it again. That's what I would be worried about. But otherwise, it has a pretty unique offering as far as what it's bringing to